and welcome to the Daily English Lab podcast. I am your host, Cynthia, and sitting right across from me is your expert co-host, Victor. We are so thrilled you decided to join us today.
We really are. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a really fun, very practical lesson planned for you today.
We absolutely do, and we're going to keep things friendly, nice and slow, and, really encouraging today. So, to kick things off, did you know that research in cognitive psychology shows that the human brain is wired to remember information delivered in story form up to 22 times better than plain facts?
Yeah, 22 times. I mean, that is just a massive difference.
Right, it's huge, because if you just list facts, you're really only activating the basic language processing centers in your listener's brain. But the moment you start telling a story, boom, everything changes.
Oh, absolutely. The sensory cortex lights up, the motor cortex activates.
Yeah.
Your listener's brain literally syncs with yours, and they experience the narrative as if, they're living it themselves.
Which is exactly why mastering storytelling makes you unforgettable. And that brings us to the mission of today's episode. Today is an interactive English lesson on how to move from technically correct English to naturally powerful English.
And we are doing that by looking at a very specific set of tools called advanced time-relative phrasal verbs.
Yes, advanced time-relative phrasal verbs. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but these aren't just vocabulary words you memorize. They are the secret architecture that lets native speakers edit their stories like a movie director.
I love that comparison because we often think of telling a story as just stringing events together, right? Just reporting what happened. But native speakers use these verbs to actually manipulate time and control the pacing.
Actually, the best way I can think to visualize this is by looking at a railway. So think about your standard English tenses, the past perfect, the past continuous. Those standard tenses are essential, but they are basically just the tracks on the railway.
Right, they lay the ground.
Exactly, they give you a path. But these time-relative phrasal verbs we're teaching you today, they are the train itself. They are the engine that carries the story forward with energy.
That is such a helpful way to frame it. The tracks keep you from derailing, but the train, well, that dictates the ride. If you only use standard tenses, your story gets locked into real time. It just moves in this straight, sometimes kind of tedious line.
Yeah, just one scene, then the next, then the next.
Exactly. But when you introduce this time-relative phrasing, you break that straight line. You can jump back to a foundational moment, or skip the boring parts, or deliberately stretch out the tension.
It gives you so much power over the narrative. So listener, we want to hear from you right now. Drop a comment and answer this. What is your biggest challenge when telling stories in English? Is it finding the right words, or is it keeping people interested?
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Now, while you're there, be sure to subscribe and like this episode so you never miss a lesson.
All right, so we should probably start where every good story starts at the beginning. Before a story can move forward, you have to let the listener know where it started over, right? You have to set up context and build a little mystery.
You do. And the best tools for that are anchor phrases. Specifically, phrases like go back to, hark back to, and stem from.
Okay, let's start with go back to.
Right, so if you start a story by saying, it all goes back to a rainy Tuesday in March, you are creating narrative gravity. You're hooking them right in those first few seconds.
Which is actually a great cultural tip to bring up. Native English speakers, whether you're at a dinner table or in a job interview, they can be a bit impatient.
Oh, very impatient. They are subconsciously asking, why should I care about this?
Exactly. You have to hook them immediately. But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Why can't a beginner just say, in the past or a long time ago? Isn't that just easier?
I mean, it is easier, but those phrases are entirely flat. Saying in the past conveys the information, but it strips away all the intrigue. When you say go back to, it's like drawing a giant X on a treasure map.
Oh, I see. It promises a payoff.
Yes, but here's the common mistake. People will draw that X on the map, but then they are too vague. They don't put anything interesting underneath it.
Right. They say, it all goes back to my childhood, which is just boring.
Exactly. You must follow the phrase with a specific, vivid detail. There's this great example of a person explaining why she learned Japanese. At first, she just said, I always liked languages.
Which is a fact, but it's not a story.
Exactly. The brain just files that away and stops paying attention. But then she reconstructed it using an anchor phrase. She said, it all goes back to this one manga I found in my uncle's box when I was 9.
Wow, yeah. That is a doorway to a great story. I can instantly see the dusty box, the comic book, all of it.
Because it's tangible. And you can do this with stem from, too. Like, this whole problem stems from a misunderstanding we had last month. It isolates the root cause.
Or if you want a nostalgic mood, you could use hark back to, like, this architecture harks back to the 1920s. Okay, listener, it's your turn for some interactive speaking practice. Mentally pause for a second, think of your own life story, and complete this sentence. It all goes back to the moment when...
Yeah, think of a specific, vivid moment, and go ahead and write your sentence in the comments. We'd love to read them.
So once we have anchored the listener in the past, how do we keep the story from dragging? Because nobody wants to hear a boring sequence of, and then I did this, and then this happened.
No, the "and then" laundry list is the fastest way to lose your audience. You need forward momentum. And we build that with phrases like fast forward to, lead up to, and build up to.
I actually like to compare these forward-moving phrases to a film remote control.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to look at it. How does that work?
Well, fast forward to is the skip button. You just use it to skip over the boring parts where nothing happens. Then lead up to is the slow motion button, which you use to stretch out the tension. And build up to is like the volume knob, turning up the emotional intensity and dread or excitement.
That maps so perfectly to how we experience stories. Fast forward to respects the listener's time, while build up to manages their emotional state. Let's actually do a mini role play to demonstrate this.
I would love that. Let's use the example of getting into a minor car accident. I'll tell the flat version first, just using standard facts.
Okay, go for it. Let's hear the flat version.
I was driving, a car hit me, and then I called the police.
See, you gave me the data, but it's totally sterile. I feel nothing. Now let's try the cinematic version using the remote control.
Okay, here we go. I had been building up to that drive all day. Everything that led up to the impact happened in slow motion. Fast forward to the police arriving, and I realized I hadn't been breathing.
Wow. Yeah, the difference is night and day.
Right. As the speaker, you're guiding my nervous system. I feel the exhaustion with building up to, the dilation of time with led up to, and then you just skip the boring wait time with fast forward to.
Exactly. You drop the listener right into the aftermath. It's incredibly engaging.
So time for another practice round for you listening. Take a boring sentence like, I studied for the exam and passed, and rebuild it in the comments using one of those forward movement verbs.
Give it that cinematic feel. So we've gone backward, we've gone forward. But great storytellers don't just move in a straight line, do they?
No, they don't. The real master move is returning to the beginning. It's tying it all together.
Yes. This is the underlying principle of starting at the end and working back to the beginning. We do this with phrases like circle back to and come back to.
I like to call this the boomerang analogy. You know, you throw an idea out at the start of your story, it travels through the air while you talk, and then it comes back to you with new energy. But wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure, what's the issue?
What if a learner says, circling back to what I said earlier, and then they just repeat the exact same information? Isn't that just a waste of time?
Yes, and that is actually the biggest mistake people make with this. Repetition instead of a true loop back. If you just repeat it, it's redundancy.
So how do we avoid that?
You have to, as they say, twist the knife. When you return to that earlier detail, it must mean something entirely new so the listener thinks, oh, wow, so that is what that really meant.
I get it. Like if you mention you felt nervous before a meeting, and then at the end you say, circling back to that nervousness, it wasn't just jitters, it was my intuition knowing the deal was bad.
Exactly. You recontextualize it. It rewards the listener for paying attention to the details you gave them.
It's so satisfying when a story does that. Okay, so knowing these individual tools is great. We've got the anchors, the forward buttons, the boomerangs, but true fluency comes from the layering technique, right?
It does. It's about combining them flawlessly to create a full journey. Let's look at a complete example of a story about a mentor, and notice how all these phrases stack together.
Okay, let's hear it.
Everything really goes back to a conversation I had with my mentor. At the time, I brushed it off. Fast forward to last year, and I had to make a huge choice. In the weeks leading up to the decision, I felt this strange certainty. Afterward, I circled back to what my mentor had said, and I understood it completely. And coming back to right now, sharing this with you, it all makes sense.
That is just brilliant. In one short story, you drop the anchor with, goes back to, you hit the skip button with fast forward to.
Then stretch the tension with leading up to, right?
Yep, and then caught the boomerang with circled back to, and grounded us in the present with coming back to.
It creates this beautiful, breathing architecture for the story. But of course, there are pitfalls. When you're trying to layer like this, things can go wrong.
Which is completely normal, by the way. If you make these mistakes, listener, it's actually a sign of progress because it means you are actively trying to use advanced English architecture. So, what are the main pitfalls?
The first one is tense confusion. People use the wrong tense with the phrase. They'll say, fast forward to last year, and suddenly I am meeting her.
Oh, using the present tense even though they traveled to the past.
Exactly. The phrasal verb signals the time travel, but the tense must correctly describe what happened when you arrived. So it should be, fast forward to last year, and suddenly I was meeting her.
Got it. The destination dictates the tense. What's the second mistake?
Using these phrases as generic filler.
Like without any vivid detail.
Right. Just saying it goes back to the past. Instead of giving us a specific image, it breaks the promise of a good story.
And the third pitfall.
Overlooping. Circling back way too many times in one story.
Oh, like throwing 5 boomerangs at once. Circling back to the weather and circling back to my breakfast. I can see how that would make the listener dizzy.
It really does. You only want to loop back if it adds profound meaning. Otherwise, just leave it in the past.
This has been so incredibly helpful. To summarize our core lesson today, time-relative phrasal verbs are the architecture, the beams, and the angles that make your story stand up and breathe.
They really are. And we just want to praise you, the listener, for showing up today and investing in your English fluency. Taking the time to learn these advanced tools is how you become unforgettable.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave you with a brand new, slightly provocative thought to ponder on your own.
Oh, I like provocative thoughts. What is it?
Well, if using these time-relative verbs changes how a listener experiences your story, could it also change how you, the speaker, actually remember your own past?
Wow, that's deep.
Right. By editing your timeline with language, skipping over things, or looping back, you might be actively reshaping your own memories. Your language constructs your reality.
That is something to really think about.
It is, and it's the perfect setup for our next episode where we will be exploring modal verbs and speculative language for what-if stories, the parallel lives and the decisions not taken.
That is going to be a fantastic lesson. You won't want to miss it.
So please remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, and share your practice sentences in the comments below. We can't wait to read them. Until next time, remember, every great story starts with someone brave enough to begin.